Sister Layla live, Sister Layla live, weekly for the show at the hour. Ask Sister Layla live, Sister Layla. Invite your friends and family, make it cozy. Ask Sister Layla. Woke, there are so many things going on around. You must take heed. It's been written and prophesied about, so you must believe. Not everything that glitters is gold. Pay attention as it's been told.
Join us every Friday, 7 p.m. Eastern, with Brother Yusuf as he tackles and breaks down current events, current news, and politics, and the Islamic Ummah. Please join us, streaming on all major platforms. Channel Sunnahfollowers.
ثلاثة اثنان واحد.
This is my favorite time of the year.
Sunnahfollowers. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Please join us for a new program, Tuesdays, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, brought to you by Dr. Ali. Reflections on Ramadan, followed by questions. Please join us Tuesday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, right here on Sunnahfollowers, streaming on all major platforms. Channel Sunnahfollowers.
The human brain is a marvel of creation, intricately designed to seek meaning and connection. During Ramadan, this quest for spiritual fulfillment is heightened. Fasting activates areas of the brain that are associated with empathy, self-control, and reflection. Join us this Thursday at 6:15 p.m. for an enlightening lecture by Dr. Daniel Abdurrahman McBride on the fascinating connection between the brain, religion, and Ramadan. Okay, assalamu alaikum everybody. Inshallah, we'll be beginning our series on the human brain in a few minutes with Dr. McBride. Just want to, I call myself logging in, testing the program because they did some updates to the stream. I had to make sure that I put the updates in here. Okay, so I want everybody to pay attention. This is what, the 13th day of fasting, subhanallah. We're the second week of Ramadan is almost done. We're halfway there. What does that mean? Ramadan is halfway over. So everybody should be, used to it by now. The blood is moving through your veins. Your body is under control. Your stomach is not overdoing it. I hope you brothers are going to the mosque to perform the Taraweeh at night. You're not doing like the idiots. And like I said, what that hadith, what did the prophet say? Out of every 1,000 people 999 of them are going to be in hell. All those that sitting up there praying at Times Square, that ain't Islam. Okay, the Prophet Muhammad was clear. He said, your prayer at the mosque. The mosque are the houses of Allah. They are maintained by the true believers. You want to know who the believers are in your city? They're the ones that's at the mosque praying Taraweeh. They're not the ones that's in the street. The Prophet said, do not pray in the street. He said that. He told the companions, your prayer in the mosque is where it's supposed to be. Your prayer in the street ain't nothing compared to the mosque or in the marketplace. None of that. So those are all authentic hadiths. So I hope you brothers.
Your mic is muted in the Zoom.
What is it? What happened?
Your mic is on mute in the Zoom.
Oh, okay. But so at least they can hear me though. But alhamdulillah for the people in here that can hear me. I was really talking to the people on there anyway. And I wasn't talking to the Zoom. The Zoomers never answer, so I wasn't talking to them anyway. But anyway, like I was saying, so I hope you brothers are not doing that. I hope that you are at the mosque with your Taraweeh. Okay, because those hadiths are all clear. They're all authentic. We don't do that, So don't miss out, brothers. Don't miss out. Don't miss out. Don't miss out on the reward of Taraweeh behind the Imam at the mosque. Okay, everybody got that? Is that clear for you young brothers? Yeah, if you see people doing it, just walk past them. Keep it moving. Exactly. You're going to walk past a mosque and go pray in the filthy streets of the city where all that haram is going on. Naked women, cars with marijuana. That marijuana stuff stink, man. Vaping and all. Oh, no. TVs everywhere. Music blasting. We don't do that. Exactly. So don't fall into that trap. Okay. Yes. Yeah, but like I was telling you, brothers, if they're going to tell you that something, anybody that tells you when it comes to actions of worship, remember what we talked about when I did that series on the lawful and the unlawful. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, when it comes to actions of worship, everything is haram. Everything is haram. Everything is haram unless Allah said so. So if it's okay to do that, then where's their dalil when we got clear evidence? There's hadith, several hadiths where the Prophet speaks out against praying in the streets, praying in the marketplace. Then you got the verse of the Quran where Allah is clear. The mosque is the place. That's the house of Allah. Okay? So if these brothers tell you that nonsense and they don't have nothing to back it up, then you just say, thank you, bro, and keep it moving. But don't participate in that. Yeah, what he's talking about, for those of you who can't see because he's on a different platform, he's saying that even in his university, this is one of the young brothers, he's in college. He said in his university, their Muslim Student Association wants to hold, Taraweeh prayer on campus. I mean, come on, what? Now we've gotten just plain ridiculous. And then you're going to end up violating your college's rules and guidelines, and you're going to get kicked out of college. What are you holding a Taraweeh prayer on campus for? All this demonstration, and this is not Islam. We have to do what Allah says do, and do it the way he says. You take that Taraweeh to the mosque, not to no campus of a university to make people hate us more. That's all you're doing, because you're violating the rules of the campus. You're going to be arrested. There's going to be demonstrations, all that nonsense. You know, why are you doing that? You kids need to get it together and learn your religion. Go to the mosque. Your blessings are at the mosque as a man. And you girls, go home. Bottom line. You young girls, just go home and pray in your house. Period. Dot. Because that's where your blessing is. What are y'all doing? It's crazy. Yeah. And then you're going to get kicked out of college. Exactly. These Muslim student associations need to get it together, man. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, but yeah, stay away from that, brother. I feel bad for you young Muslims today, because y'all, you know, all this propaganda is out there, and subhanallah, you young Muslims, y'all just don't know what right from wrong. You don't know the lawful from the unlawful. You following these internet influencers who are not scholars, who are not even people of knowledge, and I can see why y'all confused. But you better learn from the people of knowledge and keep it moving. Why are you going to risk your parents' money by getting kicked out of some university? Are you crazy? And you ain't even getting no blessings for what you're doing. Think. Use your noggin. Yeah. Sister Jamila, why come you can't see me? What's wrong with Sister Jamila? Sister Jamila, you can't see me and you can't hear me. Somebody type to Jamila that it's her cell phone or her computer, because the rest of y'all can see me and hear me, right?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, so that's her. Oh, I'm talking to the people on YouTube, guys. Zoom people, when I need y'all don't never answer the question.
That's what I meant. I meant YouTube. We can hear and see.
Oh, you on YouTube? Okay, good. Who that? That's Yasmin. Yeah. Okay, she's on YouTube.
Yeah. I just talked to her this morning, so.
Yeah. And that's okay, she's on YouTube. Okay, let me write down that I can know Yasmin is on YouTube. Okay, so she's watching YouTube. Good.
Sister Leila.
Uh-huh.
I couldn't help but I was listening to what you were saying a few minutes ago, and I was interested in innovations, and if not interested in them, but I mean, if you're around a group of Muslims, I'm talking about a group of Muslims, and they say something in the prayers or whatever, and it's just not the way you were taught, or the way that you see it in the Quran or Hadith. What should you do?
Real easy. I mean, Allah says in the Quran, do not sit in a company. You shouldn't be around those type. What you doing around them type of people anyway?
I just heard them, and
yeah, well, you just leave. Allah says don't sit in the presence of people who do evil. First of all, these Muslims ain't got no business in the talking to the press about nothing. Most people ain't qualified. Most Muslims don't understand their religion. They don't know their deen. You know, like Dr. Ali said, if you talking from a personal experience is one thing, but you want to try to be a scholar and try to tell people what's lawful and unlawful, you know, you shouldn't be around people like that anyway. You see a person doing that, you just leave. You just get up and leave. If you in college, like I was telling these young brothers here, you know, if you see that why are you with that Muslim student association? Most of these Muslim student associations got issues. They ain't into no Islam. You know, look at the fact that the girls ain't even covering up, ain't dressing properly. Why are you hanging out with them? Okay, why are you even with them? That's just like the kids that got arrested. Y'all remember my two crazy students who got sent back home to Africa because they participated in a protest and they got kicked out the school. Like their father said, what the heck was you doing involved in that crap? Okay? So we're not supposed to be in the company of that. When you see people doing wrong, you leave. You see a bunch of Muslims sitting around pretending to be scholars, talking to the news media about Islam, you know, you just exit stage left. Because they ain't gonna listen to what you got to say anyway. If you tried to correct them, you know, you're gonna be ridiculed. Ain't nobody gonna listen to you because you ain't nobody qualified either that the media wants to listen to. The media ain't gonna come to just anybody. The media, I told y'all, is about sensationalism. I'm a journalist. I know. We're trained to look to make things out to be what they ain't. It's sensationalized. It's all propaganda. They ain't gonna come to you who's telling the truth anyway. They're gonna bypass you and say, we didn't ask your opinion, because believe it or not, the media knows the truth. They're told the truth by their editors before they even hit the street. But they're told, don't get them to say this. Don't get them to say that. We want them to say the opposite. It's propaganda that journalists are trained to do. Like Brother Youssef said. That's why I tell y'all, make sure y'all hear from Brother Youssef. He ain't lying about that stuff. Anybody went to school for journalism will tell you we're trained to do that. Okay, so they ain't gonna listen to you. What are you sitting there? Leave. Keep your mouth shut. Why are you hanging out with people like that? For these college students.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, what if these are Muslims, but they're from a different?
It don't. Why are you hanging out with them? Like I told these brothers. Yeah, like I told these brothers here. Why are y'all involved with that MSA? You know they ain't doing nothing right.
I mean, like Sheikh Adley used to say, you know, when he would talk about innovations, different things people would say or do.
Most Muslims don't know what innovation is. That's the sad reality. Most Muslims are ignorant. They don't even know what innovation is. They don't know the lawful. That's the point I'm making. Most Muslims today don't know what's lawful and what's unlawful. They don't know what an innovation is. Most Muslims think driving a car is an innovation. So why are you around people like that who don't know their religion? You know, that's why the prophet said, be careful who you hang with, you surround yourself with. And that's what I'm telling these young kids here in college. You know, you're going to end up getting kicked out of your university, your mother and father's money wasted. And if you're from Africa, you're going to be deported like they did them 2 other little girls. Why are y'all involved in that crazy? You did school to get your education. You get that education, go home, go to the mosque. Stay away from that. Yeah. Oh, Dr. McBride's here.
Yeah, he's here.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Here he is. I was trying to hold him over until you came.
I appreciate it. I apologize for being late.
That's okay. That's okay, because I had to deal with my little college student kids in here talking about they want to do some protesting and they end up kicked out of school.
Yeah, we got to be careful with these racists. They're not even following any kind of fairness or agenda, any nice agenda, any equal agenda.
Exactly. You got to be careful on your mother's money and stuff. I mean, please, let me make him a co-host. Wait a minute.
I already did, Sister Layla.
Okay.
I already make him a co-host.
Okay, everybody's ready?
Am I on?
Okay, wait a minute. Let me.
There you go. There we go. Sorry.
Okay, I'm gonna put you back as a host, AY, but make me co-host because I'm gonna have to switch computers. Where's AY? Let me make her back host. Okay, and make me co-host because I'm gonna have to, so I can still stream. Oh, did I mess it? Oh, I forgot. Make me co-host so it doesn't kick me off. AY. Oh, she didn't do it. Let me hold on. Okay, she did. Okay. Am I still streaming, y'all? Okay, we're there. Okay, let me do the introduction now. And close this up. Okay. Inna alhamdulillah, wa salat, wa salam ala wa rasulullah. I want to welcome everybody back to another session with Dr. McBride on the human brain and fasting and Ramadan. Everybody sit back, pay attention. You know, learn how to control your brain so you can get the potential of your brain, especially during this month of Ramadan. So I'm going to turn this over to Dr. McBride. Take notes, And here we go.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I apologize for my lack of tardiness. While we're talking about fasting, the word is awesome. What I want you to remember is another cool word, autophagy, autophagy. When you fast, and different researchers in their research have shown it could be 60. But the term autophagy, autophagy, that's when your body, if you fasted long enough, and if your body's hungry enough, what happens is your body starts consuming, generally speaking, it starts consuming itself, auto, and phagy is eating. So what happens is when you move into that, whatever it is for your body, when you move into autophagy, it starts cleaning out injured cells. It starts cleaning out bad cells. Everything ramps up in terms of getting healthy. Your body is going to self-eat, self-clean when it's self-eating in this case, okay? It's not a disease. It's not an autoimmune process. It's literally when you fasted long enough, your body goes into overdrive, and this term autophagy is really, really cool because fasting, it's all these little subtle things that Allah didn't explain to us, but science is only discovering what Allah has already put in place, if I can say it that way. When we talk about the word discovery, it's already here, right? Because we found it. So we found that the body moves into a state of autophagy and helps clear out injured cells, dying cells, older cells. It speeds up the replacement process, and it helps clean out unwanted cells, including cancer cells in a lot of the research. So autophagy is really important, and fasting is the way to move it into a good sense of overdrive. So today, I'd like to remind everyone of last week's talk. Last week, we talked about the frontal eye field, and the reason I start there is because what you look at is what you're going to pay attention to. Your eyes lead you into almost everything, good or bad. And what are we told as Muslims? We should always lower our gaze all the time. Why is that? We don't want to look for haram, all right? And as a side note, when you lower your gaze, when you look down, that stimulates your parietal lobes, gives you more spatial awareness, and it tends to stimulate more right brain than left brain, which makes you more self-aware and aware of others, makes you more social. So even glancing down has all these subtleties that we learn about in functional neurology and brain function. And I started there because what you're looking at is what you're going to be focused on. And that's what you pay attention to. And again, if I can, one of the big reasons I think that's so important is one of the first thing the Prophet ﷺ was told, the first word in the Quran is Iqra, or read. And how do we read? For most of us, we read with our eyes. If you're using Braille, I'm cool with that too. It's still read. And research is now showing that reading books and reading and writing, and what are we also told? We were taught with the pen, writing. We weren't taught with a keyboard. It's efficient, but it doesn't stimulate as many neural pathways. It doesn't stimulate, they've shown it on MRIs and QEEGs, that when you're reading and you're writing, or you're listening and writing, when you're taking notes, you stimulate more brain, and you make your brain work harder or work better, more efficiently. You train it in. When you're reading, when you're writing, especially when you're writing, because typing doesn't stimulate the same amount of brain function. That's more habitual because you're finding the keys and you're not stimulating as much motor function as you are with writing, and the same memory things about letters and stuff. So I started with frontal eye field because focus and attention. Now what I'd like to do is we're going to talk about the motor, premotor, and supplemental motor areas, and we're going to talk about the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. Your motor areas right here are going to be 4, 6, and then you've got premotor areas, part of 8, supplemental motor areas. They even bleed over into blend over into something. Some researchers consider your speech areas. That's a motor function and a premotor function. You've got verbal planning, so you've got premotor, right? You're planning on what to say. Your body's preparing what words, what muscles to use to deliver the words. So you've got your motor just in front of the halfway point. You've got your motor, premotor, and supplementary motor areas. You can consider associated motor areas. And that's all about the action steps that you are now initiating. And what's really cool about that is right in front of that is your dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. That's where, if you remember from what we talked about the other day, that is going to be what we consider your big word, or not clearly defined word for most of us. Your dorsolateral prefrontal cortex is going to be your executive decision making. That's where you are going to start. That's where you're going to finally, and with your prefrontal cortex up this part of it too, you're going to finally decide to do it. Left side, right, initiation, or right side, inhibit and not do it. Or if they're working together, which we hope all of ours are, if they're working together, I'm going to initiate an action. And what I want to do at the same time, that's why it's not just when people talk about the laterality and the whole brain lights up and they're all doing the same thing, that's not true. Because I'm initiating and I'm following through with my action. Getting here, turning on my computer, those are all initiating. I'm talking right now. My right brain at the same time is, and I kind of squirrel out sometimes. So my right brain is inhibiting all those other squirrely thoughts. So yes, both sides. And then of course you've got putting words together and putting thoughts together. So my right brain is active, but at the same time, most verbal stuff is coming from your verbal, most of us. I think it's like 96% of us. It's a gigantic number. Almost everyone's verbal centers are on the left side. Your Broca's area, your Wernicke's area, that's where you do all of your speaking and understanding, but this is the big picture side. So while I'm talking, while I'm listening, while we're sharing ideas, you're actually stimulating complementary word and verbal functions on the other side, but that's the big picture comprehension side of it, if that makes sense. But at the same time, while I'm initiating all these thoughts and I'm trying to focus on just my dorsolateral prefrontal cortex and my motor areas, I'm focusing on those two today while I think about my frontal eye field, while I'm thinking about my orbitofrontal cortex, while I'm thinking about my anterior cingulate, right? But I've got to inhibit talking about those because I want to focus on just this. So I'm initiating from the left, and the motor areas involved are obviously my speaking motor and of course using my hands. And the more hands you use, believe it or not, the hands and the ability to write improve with your verbal centers at the same time. It's a really cool, some cool pathways. But the better you are verbally, the more, when we talk about fine detail, motor skills, our verbal skills, and then handwriting. And of course, holding like this rather than like this, and there's tests we do for that. But the idea is your verbal centers and those fine motor skills, right? The premotor, supplementary motor, and the motor centers, right just in front of center and a little bit over here, as I said. Those are all initiating and inhibiting initiation actions. Then the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, actually the executive functions, now this is what I am decision making about. This is left side would be planning the steps I'm going to take to do this. Prepare the talk ahead of time. And I actually have things written down just in case I forget something, just in case I lose track, but I highlight my key points and they're here to remind me what I want to talk about. So what you have is, and I'll read it to you. It's really cool. Dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the highest level of thinking and planning. And what is that right next to? Right next to the motor centers. So the highest level of thinking and planning is right here, and the frontal eye field is right in that area right there also. Okay. So what you have is where all of this motor action, planning action, and eye function, also motor action, all of this is right here next to each other, so that it can be done, like you say, like you can see, within milliseconds. The words pop in, they come out. Yes, it makes sense. Hopefully it comes out. And it's really cool when you think about it. This stuff doesn't just evolve and develop. I mean, we can talk about that. And I know my evolutionists they're really on that stuff. And they can probably explain a lot of hypotheticals. But the idea is planning this stuff out, laying it down, creating us makes much more sense to me, and as Muslims to you also. Evolution is a cool idea, and I can accept adaptation. Your bodies adapt all the time. As we age, it's harder for us to put on muscle, for example. It's a big thing, exercise and muscle. Well, when I was in my teens and 20s and 30s, I could see rapid changes up and down literally within weeks of changing protocols, my exercise protocols. Now it's not as easy, but I still put in the effort. And it's really cool because your body as it ages also adapts in a lot of good ways. So I'm not complaining. It's just really cool. So I'm a big fan of adaptation, but to say we evolved everything on earth, the trees, the grass, you and me, not just animals coming from the same source, but understand what they're saying with the theory of evolution. We all are supposed to have come from the same single-celled organism, and eventually it broke into multiple cellular organisms. Then it separated and broke apart and became multi-different organisms. Then it developed into a blade of grass and you and I. So for me, that whole evolutionary part doesn't make sense. Only the main reason is because there's nothing more efficient than single-celled organisms. And usually the argument for evolution is smarter, stronger, right? Well, that's not the case. Smarter to initiate and avoid, but we're not stronger. If you threw us, if you remember what they used to do in Roman times, and everybody brags about Roman history, man, we know they used to throw people to the lions. And how many single combat things, except in movies, right? The lion's going to always win, isn't he? Or she, for that matter, the lioness, they'll always win. Doesn't that make sense? So smarter is better, but at the same time, we've got to understand single-celled organisms are more efficient. You can research this stuff now. You can look it up on the internet with whatever search engine you want to do. Evolution and single-celled when you've got bacteria, when you've got viruses, you've got all this stuff, they adapt and mutate quickly. Think about it. If it takes pretend it's only one generation with bacteria and viruses, we're talking about this fast. Within 20 minutes, in some cases, you've got a whole new generation. Human beings, we're talking generations. We're talking about reproductive ages in terms of teens, right? We're talking a decade or two. And picture that. Imagine now the adult has to survive long enough to train in the child. So it's even more than one generation. It's even more than teens and 20s. We imagine the minute you hit reproductive age, now how smart are you, number one? And number two, how much longer do you have to live and your child has to live so they can learn enough to survive and reproduce and teach it to their children? Does that make sense? So for me, this evolution thing doesn't make sense based on efficiency and the likelihood of living long enough. And there's too many missing links. We all know that. So I'm a big fan of creation, and this is why, and the brain itself, the fact that all of this stuff works in there and the way it connects, and we won't even get into that. And now I've got to turn my right brain on and inhibit the distractions I'm using. So the idea is, think about it. With the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, if you are making, and we talk about treatments and stuff, if you are making decisions, and pretend the whole decision is good, right? You get this big idea, and there it is. Your right brain says, man, I've got this great idea. And then now I've got to push it over to the left dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. Yes, and these are some of the steps I make. And then I push it back to the motor areas, right? Or maybe it's frontal eye field and that part of the motor area and the motor areas. I'm going to go to the library. I'm going to get a book, or you can get it on the computer stuff through certain apps, and you can access all kinds of library books, right? So now you've got to push it over to the left to then initiate the actions that you need, and you need to focus your attention on that. Those three fields by themselves, right? So imagine if you're real good at coming up with the ideas, but you've got no follow through. Well, then, what I want you to do, really cool, because I want you to involve your eyes again. And again, what we're going to do is modify what I told you the other day for left and right. And that's why I started with hemisphericity, understanding left and right. What we're going to do is we're going to focus on, if you have a problem initiating, we're going to focus on the left side, which means what? If we're doing, remember saccades and anti-saccades? Saccades are when the finger wiggles. Let me come over. I'm going to turn this a little bit. So imagine when the finger wiggles, you want your eyes to immediately flick to the wiggling finger and then come back to middle. The other finger wiggles, you look there, come back to middle. And this takes a partner because I know what I'm going to do, right? So the partner wiggles the left, you look at it and come back. Wiggles the left, you look at it, come back. Wiggles the left, you look at it, come back. Then they wiggle the right, you look at it and come back, right? Wiggle left, look at it, come back. And you make it as random as possible so that it is truly reaction and frontal eye field and immediate initiation from the opposite frontal lobe. So if I'm trying to train out the left with a saccade movement, or train in the left with a saccade movement, I'm going to want to wiggle the right, in my case, the right thumb more than the left thumb, okay? So I might wiggle, look, wiggle, look, wiggle, look, wiggle, look the other way, wiggle, look back, wiggle, look back, wiggle, look back, wiggle, look, wiggle, look, wiggle, look, wiggle, look, wiggle, look, wiggle, look. Does that make sense? So what you're doing is this frontal lobe, the whole frontal lobe that we're discussing, all 5 subcortical regions, when you're doing a saccade over, when you're doing that saccade action, you're literally stimulating this whole left side. You're stimulating the motor area, premotor, supplemental area. You're stimulating the frontal eye field because you're using vision. You got a little bit of motor with the, well, not you, they would. Okay, you got the motor with the eye movement. You've also got the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, right in this area, that's making the decision, go, follow the directions. It said when that thumb moves, you got to look at it, you got to look at it, you got to look at it. When the other thumb moves, you got to look at it, you got to look at it. Then back here, because we're focusing on left in this example. So what you're doing is you're stimulating that whole side. And then, of course, you've got your anterior cingulate, we'll talk about next time, and the orbital frontal cortex, which we'll talk about next time also. Those are more in terms of social skills, and the anterior cingulate will be motivation, but we'll talk about that next time. But you're also doing some anterior cingulate because you got to be motivated to want to make that improvement, right? So literally with the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, it would be cognitive function, it's executive function, it's planning, it's goal setting, and inhibiting unwanted goals, thoughts, and actions. Fine, detailed motor skills. Another thing, like I said, I wrote it down for a reason. Believe it or not, reading out loud helps target the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. Just like this kind of thing, the saccade movement, it's stimulating your frontal eye field, your motor centers, and your dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. You're also doing, when you read out loud, What did we just talk about? Fine motor skills, verbal centers. Yes. So you're really targeting a lot of left hemisphere when you read out loud. Not only do you have eye movement, you have reading out loud, you have mouth and motor movement. You also are stimulating your verbal centers. If you're reading out loud and there's a message or a theme, your right side is stimulated, trying to figure out why the author did that, why the characters did that. Reading out loud is a great, fine, detailed dorsolateral prefrontal cortex motor area and frontal eye field activity to train that stuff in, okay? And it would actually be both right and left in that case. And it's really good, almost forgot, believe it or not, memory, because you've got to remember what the words are when you read them. Your eyes, your brain reads in blocks. It recognizes. That's why I always laugh when I see these tests. And before I knew that, I used to take them all the time. It'd come up on your computer and it'd say, if you can read this and you've only got the front and the back letters that are correct, if you can read this paragraph, you're a genius. Well, most people can do that. Well, hopefully we're all geniuses then. But the idea is your brain reads letters and words in blocks. So it looks at the whole word. Once you learn things, it looks at the whole word. You don't need to sound everything out again. So the more you read, the better your memory and the better your reading skills will be. Honestly, the more you read, the more words you pronounce correctly, the more memory, the more basal ganglia, the more automatic it becomes, the better your brain is functioning, okay? And literally reading out loud, such a fine motor skill. Some people can't pronounce anything. So think about how hard your brain is working to pronounce things correctly. When my computer guy and I are talking, he says something in, if I say something in Spanish, of course, I stumble through it because I'm not used to it, but I try to get the pronunciation correct, fine motor skill. And then some of the things, because he literally grew up in Puerto Rico. He is original, his main language is Spanish. So when he's trying to pronounce the English pronunciation, we have a good time with that. He's laughing at my horrible Spanish, and his English is better than my Spanish, though. But we have a good time with that. But that's because it's a fine motor skill and you're training it in. That's why learning multiple languages is just brilliant. And we should all teach. I wish I would have known this when I was raising mine. We should all teach our kids a second language. Mine were learning Arabic. I just didn't realize how powerful an engine it was to drive brain function. Research shows if you grow up, if you speak 2 languages or more, if you speak 2 languages, you get a better comprehension of both of them. They did it on Mexican kids coming in when they spoke Spanish at home and English at school. First grade, they were usually behind. By second grade, they had almost caught up. By third grade, in an English-speaking school, they were literally, their comprehension skills tested out better in English and Spanish than singular English-speaking kids of the same age. So in 3 years, in a good school, in an equal environment of education, right? They were behind when they first started, but then they started to catch up. And literally the research showed that by third grade, studying the same, equal, nothing excessive, equal, by third grade, the majority of the children had caught up and surpassed their English first language classmates because they had 2 and they looked at it not just from 2 hemispheres, but they could look at it from 2 different perspectives in terms of sentence structure and everything else involved. So reading out loud and reading is huge for brain development. And again, reviewing this, you've got the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. That is your executive function, your decision-making, your planning, both initiating and inhibiting. That's fine motor control, especially your language centers, the dorsolateral prefrontal on the left, comprehension on the right, big ideas on the right, understanding the whys, moving it over to the left so that you can verbalize it as a fine motor skill, right? And working out the details. And really important, dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, because the more understanding you have of something, the better it is stored in your memory centers. And remember your hippocampus, I've mentioned that before, I'm sure. When you start to have hippocampal dysfunction, and we talk about Alzheimer's and dementia, there are other ways to stimulate memory. It's more and more research is saying that the hippocampus is what I talk about as a memory janitor. It remembers where things are. But say it's a musical memory, it's a reciting Quran, and that stimulates coming in from the auditory centers, that stimulates a different pathway to that same definition, or that same, I memorized this under so-and-so, or my mother taught me this, that kind of thing. Here in America, they're using a lot of, and all over the world, I'm sure, they're using a lot of musical therapy for memory, because songs, and I told you the story before about the grandmother who lost her ability to speak after a stroke, and they just had her sitting by a window, and a granddaughter came in, said, at least let's play her favorite songs on the radio. And the grandmother, for the first time in a year or more, had started singing with the songs, and everybody was floored. So then the doctor came in and said, oh my gosh, let's start using that all the time, and she regained her verbal skills. And they brought it in through the auditory pathway rather than straight memory and trying to recall the words. They stimulated it through a different pathway, which was auditory. So all of these connections are important, and especially how the frontal lobe functions. And in this case, like I said, dorsolateral prefrontal cortex with memory centers. So the stronger this is, and I just gave you a action for that, the test, we've got saccades, anti-saccades, and for hemisphericity, I'm going to teach you another test right now. But that's why all of this prefrontal, or this frontal cortex, this forelock, as it's mentioned 3 different places in the Quran, and in particular, Surah Al-Kahf, is that 96? 96 verse 16. No, that's another of my favorite verses. But I believe the number is 96. No, El-Alaq. I'm sorry, El-Alaq. 96 verse 16, lying, sinning, forelock. If they're a liar and a sinner, they're initiating, but they're not inhibiting. And that is the area, especially with the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, right? That's where you're going to actively executive decision, make the decision to be a good Muslim or a bad person, right? As the sister was talking about, you really have to own in your brain, and then orbital frontal cortex will come into that, what you believe, and then what you do, because the orbital, and I'll just preface next week's talk, the orbital frontal cortex, you may be able to theoretically tell me, yes, I would do this. Yes, I would do that. No, I certainly wouldn't do this. But then I had a patient do that. No, I'd never hire a rapist. I'd never hire somebody convicted of sexual assault. I'd never hire somebody who's convicted of fraud and lying. And then I said, well, why would you vote him in as president? If you're not going to hire him as an employee, why would you hire him to be your president? And that's where her right side was good, but her left side, the initiation was not there of her moral code, because she's a great person, but she voted for this choice that she made, which I totally disagree with. So that's where that decision is made, in the orbital frontal cortex. There's a lot of, that's where you tie in your social, your moral, and bring it over into action. And we'll talk about that next week. But yeah, Surat Al us, right? He said, he tells us another verse where he's got all of the creatures of all of creation it's for life. That's how important this stuff is. And that's why that's why we're teaching it here. The more you understand about your brain, the more you understand about yourself and really understand that is, if you can control your thoughts, if you can control your brain, you're in control of everything. I mean, you are, without implying that we're taking a part of God's power. That's where you can create everything with Allah being the true creator. That's where you will access all of your potential. And of course, some people will say, they'll say, oh, you can't control your thoughts. I got to tell you, that's the one thing you can control. Because right now, even if I was a little bit boring, you still paid attention to me and you tried to inhibit the thoughts of paying attention to something else. It's literally, if there's one thing I want you to know you can control, it's your thoughts. There's no exaggeration. I just don't think they put the neurology into it when they talk about positive affirmations. It is positive thoughts. It is thought control. It is, you hear something good or you hear something bad, it's automatic to say Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah, right? Something goes bad. Astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah. You make a bad decision. Oh my God, astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah. Somebody says something nice to you, mashallah. Somebody sneezes. They say Alhamdulillah. It's automatic, right? We boom, boom, boom. We say it, they say, and then we say something. I mean, it's these steps we take, isn't it? So these are things that you train in. So I'm telling you, as a functional neurologist and as a friend, I hope, through the computer, the idea is if there's one thing you can control, it's your thoughts. And that's what we are teaching by talking about these different areas, because to control your thoughts, you want to control what you pay attention to. Frontal eye field, we talked about why. To control your thoughts, you want to control your decision making. Dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, initiation on the left, inhibition on the right, yes? And then motor, you're going to decide what you're going to do. Then you're either going to not take an action, inhibit and avoid haram, or initiate action and initiate halal, right? And this is the brain, this is the area, it's neurological that you can, it's functional, it's you, Allah blessed you with the ability, you can control your thoughts. If there's nothing else you can control in your life, you can control your thoughts. And then we discussed, like I said, hemisphericity, good and bad, training in the good, training out the bad, to do that. And then here's a real cool for either side, okay? As I mentioned, we were trying to strengthen the left a moment ago, so I'll do that again. What you're going to do is you'll be here and you'll have your fingers out like this for a reason. What you're going to do is when this finger moves, boom, 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 right? Your eyes jump to that finger. So the person helping you, that finger wiggles, so my eyes jump to it. Now I'm going to teach you a parietal lobe exercise. The frontal lobe pushes to the opposite side. Now I'm going to take this finger, I'm going to bring it over here. Now my eyes are going to follow that finger back to the starting point. That is your left parietal lobe pulling it towards that finger. So then what you do, and if you're working by yourself, you don't even have to wait for the wiggle. You jump to it and then pull it back. Jump to it and pull it back. Jump to it and don't look at the thumb till it touches. Now you jump over and pull it back. Jump to it, pull it back. Does that make sense? And then if you were going to do the right hemisphere, to be nicer, to inhibit. If you're a person that blurts out all the time, if you can't control your emotions, then do a right hemisphere. Now you want to do inhibition. So what I'm going to do is I'm looking at this finger because I'm going to stimulate this side, my right side. I'm going to look at this one, then I'm going to jump to the left, then pull it back to the right. Push to the left, I should say, because you're pushing with the frontal lobe. You're going to, okay, I'm here. I'm going to push to the left, pull it to the right. Push to the left. I'm failing. I'm going to push it to the left, pull it to the right. Push it to the left, pull it to the right, push it to the left, pull it to the right. And we're using all three of the areas that I just talked about. And then we're targeting hemisphere. So remember, the frontal lobe jumps or pushes, that's your saccade. And then your parietal lobe pulls it to the same side. So if you're doing left, you're doing saccade, pull, saccade, pull. If you're doing right, saccade, pull, saccade, pull. Does that make sense? And if you have any questions, ask me and I'll do all the silliness, all the testing again. And this time I'll get it right. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
I got a question. Assalamu alaikum.
Yes, Assalamu alaikum, sister. I love that name.
Thank you.
Yes.
How would you categorize like indecisiveness? Like you kind of weigh all your options. Yeah.
Okay, so now you're trying to decide. Pretend I'm deciding, pretend I'm deciding between my right and my left hand, it doesn't matter what. I'm trying to decide. Are you saying, well, my right hand has advantages, and if I do, and do you get distracted, then, but I could go left, and then you think it out and think it out and think it out. Are you pursuing the thoughts too far, and that's your indecision? Or are you pursuing, you made a decision, but you're hesitant and overthinking the negative results?
I think it's the second one.
The negative results. Okay, then what I would say, then that's a right brain thing. Because if it's from the negative point of view, then you're thinking, pretend you've got a job, it pays your bills. This is most of us. Most of you, let me use this as a general example I have. I'm going to use this. Everyone pay attention to this. Most people I know, picture this. You could tell me exactly what you don't like about your job, why you shouldn't stay there, the coworkers, the boss, the workload, but you make enough to pay your bills. But you're happy every day. Then you get this other job that pretend, even if it only paid the same, or it might pay a little more, but then you start debating, I'm used to being here, you can tell me exactly what you don't like, and that's what most of us focus on, but you're not clear on what you do like, so you don't make the move, because then you start focusing on all the negativity over here. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that too loose an example?
No, that makes sense.
Okay, so what I would do, if you're right brain with decision making, literally, and you can train it in with little stuff, because I'll tell you, I lean right. So I started writing down what I want to do. I'm working on a project, and my computer guy and I literally write down the big picture. That's what I do. I do a big picture, but then I get lost. So I started really writing down what I need to do next, and what I need to do next, and what I need to do next. And I'm starting to engage my left brain more, the initiation side.
Mm-hmm.
So what you can do is, what's a safe example that you could say out loud in front of people? It could be the way you dress. It could be the food you eat. It could be anything you want. Because I want it to relate to you. Pretend it's food.
Okay. I was going to say.
Huh?
Yeah, that's something safe.
Okay. That's real safe.
Books.
Huh?
She loves books too.
Oh, okay. Then, okay. Then think about the food, and we'll talk about food first. Ramadan, perfect example, right? Literally, I know people, not you though, because we've never met. The idea is that I know people that gain weight every Ramadan. I mean, like every Ramadan. So the idea is, think about what you're debating in the morning when you pick out your food. And we don't pick out our food in the morning. I tend to know before I go to bed at night, I already know for me, and you can use this as an example, whatever you want to use. I know because there's also a time thing. I don't want to get distracted. I don't want to waste any time. I know I'm going to have an avocado tomorrow. I may have a banana, and I may splurge and put a little bit of peanut butter on it because I it's a shame, but I like peanut butter. Then I am going to have some coconut water to drink. I don't even like the flavor of coffee, but I drink at least 1 cup every day because there's some really good research. It started many years ago, but I really started seeing it about helping with diabetes, helping with brain stimulation, helping with a whole bunch of metabolism issues, a whole bunch of things. So I drink a cup of coffee in the morning. So that's already prepped the night before. I put a whole food powder in it to make sure I get all my nutrition. Then whatever we have for dinner tonight, I will take that protein and I will have that tomorrow. And then I will also try to squeeze in just plain mineral water. Does that make sense? So there's no waffling, there's no hesitation, because if I go into the refrigerator first thing in the morning without thinking about this, I start thinking, should I have that? Should I have this? Should I have that? Should I have this? Or now you're just going to grab up whatever, donuts, whatever bread and butter. Does that make sense? So if you can start with that waffling idea, or even with books, I tend to read front to back. I don't jump around in a book. I tend to just, because I want it to be a process that I follow all the time, and I'm real comfortable with that. If you like reading, you may want to do that too. But the idea is start whenever you start finding yourself waffling, hesitating, not initiating the action, literally tell yourself, ask this question is what I do. What's the first step I would take if I did this? I don't have to take it, but what's the first step I have to take? Like I'm working on this project with my computer guy. What do I have to do to help him get this done? He needs my information. So then I just started writing, and then I was like, oh wow, that fans out a little bit, and I have these 2 options. So then I write them both down, and it's not even in order yet, but it's an action step. Does that make sense? You have to find a way to move it from the big idea, from the idea, the thought process, take an action step. And one of the simplest things we can do, and I know I say it all the time, is start writing down your idea, then organize it when you finish writing. Because when you start writing or typing, if you want to, I like writing. When you start typing or writing, you're taking an action step. You've moved it from a thought process over to the left side. Then we've actually dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. Now picture, you're probably even envisioning it. Keep your eye on the prize, right? You may even be thinking about it, and the food, and this and that. And I know what my avocado looks like. I know what the bananas look like. I think there's 5 bananas in there and 3 avocados. I put enough coconut water. I'm envisioning all of this, right? Now I take the action step. I'm going to double check before I go to bed tonight that everything's set up. The same thing with writing it down. If you start waffling, start writing. They literally, it almost rhymes. They literally go together. The minute you start waffling, you start writing, and that continues that positive trajectory to initiation, because writing is initiating, believe it or not. Does that help?
It does make, yeah. Because I think my thing is, if I don't put anything down, it's all just one big, it's all tangled up in my head.
Yes.
So yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
You're absolutely right. And that's why they say people that you've got 2 choices. At night, and you can start tonight actually. After you finish reading Surat al-Kahf, write down tomorrow morning, or before you go to bed, plan your breakfast, put the stuff out, and if you still have room and still have time, you can always drink more extra. What I do is, if I have more time, I try to drink more water. the idea is, if it really works when people take a pen and paper and write down their thoughts just before they go to bed, like, oh my God, tomorrow I've got this work assignment, I've got this much project to do, and write it down. This is what I'm going to do. When my alarm goes off, I'm going to get up, and then when I get to the office, this is what I'm going to do. This is the first thing I'm going to do. This is the second thing I'm going to do. Maybe just do one or two things, just one or two, not a long half-hour preparation. Most people, once you get it out on paper, you're not kicking it around in your head anymore, hoping to remember it. You're not as stressed out. You literally start it, and research shows you fall asleep. Your brain is still like 99% active. The number was mid to high 90s in your sleep. So your brain is still working on things. You may wake up and have solutions to problems that you didn't even focus on, but you're like, oh my gosh, there's my eureka moment, because you initiated tomorrow's work assignment, tomorrow's project, tomorrow's whatever it is. You initiated it, your brain considers it important, and you're out. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah.
It's huge. It's literally huge.
Thank you for that.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely.
Okay, we have
Is that a Northeast accent, sister?
I'm from California, yeah.
Oh, that counts too. You guys have all kinds of accents out there. Absolutely. You guys are pretty diverse.
Yeah, we have a comment here. She
Inshallah,
says,
try that those action steps tonight then.
Please, it really, it's every, it's like every action you take, and then reading out loud. If you want to, like I said, for you particularly, I would do stimulating the left brain. Stimulating the left brain. It's going to look like this in your setup. Okay, you're going to take your eyes from this thumb you don't have to move. Without moving, you're going to take your eyes, you're going to jump your eyes or frontal lobe, push your eyes to this one. And then if you're not on screen, spread them out even farther. Literally, you can't see it out here, but move it to the farthest field of your vision so that you really push it over. You jump way over with your eyes to the corner of your eyes as far as you can see. And then you use that, you keep your eyes there, then you pull that finger back over, and that is a frontal lobe, parietal lobe, left brain activity. That helps with initiation. So as soon as this call ends, or you can try it now, practice it if you want to, this Zoom class, literally you jump over, pull it back. That's a follow maneuver, but it's pull it back. It's called pursuit. Mm-hmm. The jump is the saccade, and then the pursuit. You follow it. You pursue it with your eyes. Then you keep your eyes right here while you move this back over. Then you jump to it. I move my head so that you can see me jump. And then you pull it back. Then your eyes jump over. Then you pull it back. Then your eyes jump over and you pull it back. Your eyes jump over and you pull it back. Your eyes jump over and you pull it back. That would be saccades for the frontal lobe and pursuit for the parietal lobe. Mm-hmm. That is left brain. And if you're working on a big idea and you can't quite get the big idea, then what you would do is you do the same thing to the opposite side for the right brain. Okay. But for initiation, you'd emphasize this more than that.
Okay. Thank you so much for that.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, we have a question here. Let me get her question right quick, guys, before I break my fast, because I got to read it. She said, okay. Like mushroom coffee or another kind.
There's some great mushroom coffee. The names that jump to my mind are lion's mane, and there's, mushroom coffee. Excuse me, I said that wrong. Coffee. Mushroom coffee is really, really, really good. You just make sure you get the right mushroom coffee. Make sure you trust the supplier. I tried a company and I tried it for a couple of months and it just didn't make a difference for me. I bought the one that I wanted to be more alert. I wanted more function while I was awake because I sleep really well, alhamdulillah. My son, on the other hand, my oldest son, was really cool. He asked me, so I whenever I buy something, I share it with, I usually share stuff with the kids. He said, you know, Dad, I have a hard time sleeping at night. I'm still so alert, and I give him all these exercises. So I ordered him the mushroom coffee that helps you go to sleep. And he loves it. Oh my gosh. Can't remember the name of the company. Oh, it was called Mudwater. Mudwatr is who I bought mine from. And my son swears by it. He absolutely loved the nighttime calming formula. They send you a jar. Apparently it's like a 1 month supply, I believe it was. You could look at it, and I have no ties to them at all. If you find another company, a better company, a cheaper company that's just as good, I can tell you the calming one worked real well for my son. So I'm assuming the other one I just didn't notice or need, or alhamdulillah, I don't know. I didn't buy it for myself anymore. I didn't find it for me any more beneficial than regular coffee in terms of any alertness or focus, or I just don't notice that much with these things. But other people swear by them, and like I said, my son does, and I trust his judgment. So yes, I'm fully behind mushroom coffees, fully behind them. As long as you don't have allergies and stuff, they should work. Mushrooms are phenomenal. Allow good mushrooms. Someone had another question.
Assalamu alaikum, brother.
Walaikum salam, sister. It's good to hear from you.
Yes, I'm very, very late. I'm actually just leaving work right now, but I needed to break fast. I actually had to wait to break fast, so
cool. I hate that.
That's why.
Yeah.
But I have a question about, and I missed your class, so you may have covered it. I'm not sure. I apologize though. So I'm having an issue with articulating my thoughts. I'm going to be doing, excuse me, some speaking engagements. I've done them before, but I've always had an issue with getting the words out. Even when I, you know, I study, I prep, all of those things. It never, the majority of the time, excuse me, it doesn't come out the way I'm thinking it.
Yes. Now, with that in mind, then, the preparation, when you're talking to yourself in preparation, it's smooth in your head, yes?
Yes.
Okay, so that's not the issue. Concepts are there, the words. What happens is now, what we've got to do is, I'm a big fan of, for me, I don't like, that's why this is so hard sometimes. I hate watching myself. I don't practice in the mirror. It's a great concept, but I don't do it because it might be because I'm so visual. I tend to be very visual. So seeing myself move and stuff is a distracting. So if it works for you, I would recommend writing out your speech in its entirety and reading it out loud.
Okay.
Then what happens is, because number one, these are the exact words I'm going to say. You've already trained it in exactly what you want to say. Now the stumbling block is only one, conveying the emotion the way you want to convey it. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Oh, I'm trying to minimize what your brain has to do, because when I do public speaking and I'm working from an extended lecture, pretend if we were up talking and I have a lecture here, if I read word for word, then I had a habit of, because I don't memorize well. So public speaking for me is hard in the sense that I don't memorize well. So what I do is I read a formal lecture, I read that over and over and over again. And I read it fast.
Okay.
I read it fast, because all I want to do is get used to dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. That just the minute I say dorso, lateral prefrontal cortex falls right into place. Does that make sense?
Got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Then you pick up your sentences, like I know highest level of thinking and planning, because I almost always say that together. That's the next sentence. Cognitive activities, executive function, goal setting, it's there. So what you do is you read it as fast as you can, as much as you can, over and over and over again, so that the patterns of the words are there. And then what I'll do is, in a formal lecture, I'll glance at it. We're talking, and I don't hide the paper. It's talking, and here we are, and I'll read it, and then I know where I am, and I'll say it out loud, and then I may add a little bit because the emotions, or I may say, oh, you know what, this also applies to this, and then I'll go back to, yeah, now we've got the orbital frontal cortex, and I know that social behavior and socialization and fitting in with society and appropriate actions and appropriate non-actions. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because you create these, again, it's really, a lot of times it's about pattern creation. And then if you want to save up the money, or you can go on Amazon, but I can't speak for all of the red light and infrared light products. I don't. But believe it or not, they've got things out there that I can recommend, or I've actually bought and used and given, that you can red and infrared. That's this verbal side. Does that make sense? So now you already wrote it, you created it, you did it a lot. Now, like when I drive to work, I have it's almost like what you would say an industrial base. It's an office grade red, infrared. It's got over 200 and some odd settings in it. I mean, for everything, healing, everything, inshallah. What you want to do is get something that is red and infrared, and you can pick them up for right around $100 plus or minus. And it literally, the red, you want to look at the numbers. If you're ever looking at a red light infrared product, you want to be, most of them sell in the numbers 660 nanometers, 660 nms to 880 nms, nanometers. What is it? I'm trying to learn sign language. It's nms for those of you who may know sign language, nanometers. But it's literally that. What I'll do on my drive to work is, when there's no traffic, I'll literally light up the left side of my head because I want to be very focused. I don't need any more big picture ideas at the time. And I'm very much focusing on what I need to get done at the office. And I'll light up my left hemisphere during my drive. I'm not in New York City or Southern California, so I don't have to worry about much traffic out here where I am. But what you could do, the reason I mention that for you is you light up that left hemisphere. That is going to be your Broca's area. You can look it up, BROCA''S, and Wernicke's area, WERNICKE''S. Those are the keys to talking, to being verbal, those two areas. And then there's what we call an arcuate fasciculus. So I do this whole thing right here. I'll do the whole left hemisphere because I want to initiate. I want to make sure my verbal skills are spot on when I get to the office, and I'll light it up. Maybe next week I'll break it out and I'll do it while we talk. And then, sister, what you can do is hold the camera real close to your head, and I'll hold it for you too. But the idea is, if you wanted to, I've got to break my fast right away. If you wanted to, Mom, the idea is that you could look at where I bought a couple of these. It's called Platinum LED. Platinum LED. They have, you can't have these in the car. They're like 3 feet by 9 inches across, and they're about that wide. And they have red and infrared. They've been approved. They've been researched. They're really solid. They have 2 different product lines. They have the Bio and the Bio Max. The Biomax has sliders on it so that you can change the percentages. That's not important for us. But you can turn on the red, you can turn on the infrared on both of them. I just turn them both on. I bought my first one. I bought for my mother because her feet were getting sore all the time. 88 years old and up on her feet, and her feet got sore. So I bought it, and it's sturdy. She'll set her feet on it, turn it on red and infrared, and just sit there while she's reading the paper, while she's reading, while she's doing things. This red light works and helps alleviate the pain, probably some inflammation that she's unaware of. It stimulates better nerve function, better cellular function. That's how it works. That's how red and infrared work, generally speaking. You could get one of those, and while you're prepping, while you're reading, you set it next to you, and I could show you that next week if I remember also. But you can set it next to you and flush your left side with red infrared light during your preparation, and that would help improve left brain function. And then you do it just before you leave the house for your talking. It's a couple $100. I think it was, I was getting mine on sale, and it generates income with patients and stuff, so it was affordable because it generated income. When you look at their website, the bio is, like I said, don't go with a Biomax or Bio 3, whatever, the bio one. Bio 300, I think, is what I bought, smaller version. And that is, I think it costs just under $400. But again, a lot of my things I use to generate income. So for me, when I say affordable or not, it's also because there's a reimbursement. Does that make sense? So,
all right, you're gonna make a profit.
Yes. Because that red light, I use that for so many patients. You can't even think. I mean, it's awesome for everything, from pain to memory function, the whole gamut. So,
Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much, brother. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It took me back to my speaking days. I was an interviewer for 7 years.
Whoa, that's a lot of left brain, isn't it?
Yeah, a whole lot. And I had to memorize everything because I had to look them in the eyes.
Yes.
Spoke with them. And I looked in the mirror. I was like a little girl. I used to perform in the mirror.
Hello.
But you write it all down, read it over and over and over again, and it'll just come to you so smoothly.
Doesn't it? I totally agree, sister. I'm amazed. I couldn't practice in the mirror. Yeah.
The only thing that would throw you off is when you look at your audience and you find yourself speaking of what you've written, and they don't fit the audience that you're looking at. You gotta change up. You gotta change up.
Right. Yeah.
No, I gotta tell you, I swing the other way on that one. It sounds silly, but I am better in a gigantic audience because I'm looking for, picture there's 100 or 1,000 people there. All I need is one of those 1,000 people to nod yes, and that's all I see anymore. I'm not gonna lie to you. I literally, like, when I'm speaking to 2 and 3 people, it's easier for me to be distracted by going, wow, that brother doesn't look at that frown, you know, and I'm lost. But if I've got a bunch of people, then I'm like, oh yeah, that cat 5 rows back is with me.
Right.
So then I get motivated. Yeah.
My last public speaking was with my Alexander City Public Schools before I came out last year. I was selected to be a representative for the whole division in my sector. I had to speak, just public speaking straight up. And I talked directly to the children, you know, and they said they loved it. I was on Channel 4 News.
Oh, that's cool.
Also on the Alexander Public School website. And I sent pictures to Layla. I think I showed some pictures here of me standing there. It's the last time I was standing, you know, with
my fallback, in other words.
Mhm,
Yeah,
mhm.
alhamdulillah.
We have a question here from a sister. She says, if you don't mind, what do you
Yes.
think is a good nutritional powder to take? She said, I use Dr. Short's Superfood Plus.
Okay. I use a company I've been with for probably 2 decades now, because everything they do is based on research. I mentioned it before, Standard Process, and it's standardprocess.com, STANDARD, one word into process, PROCESS.com. And they have a product called SP and sign, right? SP Complete. SP Complete. And the reason I use that, number one, like I said, they do it all based on research. I know that when they're drying out their product, they use another thing called cold processing, meaning the product is down here and the heat is way, way, way up here. And what it does is it evaporates without heating the product. The plant, whatever's in there, the plant all it does is dry out, but it doesn't get warm. Because when you kick things up over 72 degrees, you start to break down the binding and you change what's in there. Once you start changing chemical bonds, you change chemicals. So I like theirs because it's cold processing. Number two, the Standard Process also grows almost everything in there is organically grown. Number three, like I said, and huge, I can't emphasize, this is number one, this is number three. It's based on research. Everything in there is in there for a reason. They even use honey. If it's sweetened at all, they use local honey. So I'm a big fan of that. A lot of their stuff is, and you can look at that's why I gave you the website. Look at their product, SP Complete. They've got plain that tastes like grass. They've got vanilla. I like that one if I'm making a smoothie, a fruit shake, and I use chocolate every morning with my coffee because I don't like the flavor of coffee. So I have a real bitter chocolate coffee drink. Standard Process. You can only buy it through a doctor, though. Do not do anything off of Amazon. Do not do anything off the computer. If it's not ordered from a doctor's office, or now they have what they call a patient ordering procedure. You can order this stuff. Well, what you could do is you could order, or even if you don't use them, let's focus on that. What you can do is go to their website, look up their SP Complete powders, look at their list of ingredients, and see if your product matches what I use. If you decide you wanted to use SP, and I'm not even recommending you do. If you decide you want to use them, then what you can do is through Sister Layla, we can make arrangements that you can say that I recommended it. Then they'll send me an email asking me if I actually recommended it to you. And then I say yes, and then you can order it and they ship it directly to you. Now you don't even order from me or anything. Does that make sense? So the first thing I would say is compare everything. Honestly, I can say this. Compare everything you look at, I mean everything, to Standard Process. And scroll through their website. You may even get ideas on things. But scroll through their website, and then we could certainly talk it. As soon as we finish the brain stuff, we could talk about some of the supplements. I could give you my reasons for why I have that stuff up there, and I just slide it forward, or I set things behind it, and that's why I use Standard Process. But I would recommend, that's the only company I'm super, super familiar with to answer your question. So if you're using someone, if you like them and the price is right for you, compare their products to Standard Process, because I can vouch for Standard Process. That's one of the easiest ways to do your vitamin and mineral shopping. Go to standardprocess.com, no big deal, and compare everything you look at to theirs. And they'll even give you the grams you should take every day. If they say take 3 tablets a day and each tablet is a gram, then you know you need 3 grams per day spread out throughout the day. If it says 4 grams and you take 3 tablets, then it's going to be 1.25 per, that kind of thing. So you can really compare to stand. I love staying trust.
Alhamdulillah. Well, mashallah, this was another great lecture, a great learning experience. Dr. McBride is such a gem having you here with us. Everybody enjoys your lectures. By the way, guys, please share our shorts, the shorts that I put out for Dr. McBride. Go to my YouTube channel, click on a tab that says shorts, because what I do is the most important things. I try to pick 3 or 4 of the most important things and just share them. And
your titles, even my computer guy says, man, I can't use that title because she already used it. Your titles are so spot on, and like he says, your stuff just has to be grabbing views.
Yeah, we're getting them. And the thing is, that's just YouTube. You're getting even more views on TikTok, on Instagram, because I don't even check them, but TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn. LinkedIn, they love you because those are the professional people. You got doctors following you.
Say hi to my mother, everyone.
Oh, hi, how are you? Yeah, we know it's dinner time. Oh my goodness. Yeah, we're not going to keep you much longer.
I'm going to slide off camera for just a sec to I don't like drinking in front of people. This coconut water I drink.
yeah, that's good too.
But I'm listening.
Yeah. Okay, guys. So what we're going to do, guys, next week, every Thursday, please make sure you guys join and share those shorts. Tomorrow is Brother Yusuf. Yes, Imam Malik is here. Oh, you getting ready to do your Taraweeh prayer? Okay, you got salams from Imam Malik. He said he loves your information. He said he just wanted to stop in and give salams before he start his Taraweeh prayer. Well, okay. All right. Assalamu alaikum, Imam. But anyway, mashallah, share the shorts, guys. And inshallah, remember, we'll be here, inshallah, every Thursday at 6:30 p.m. So I'm going to close out for right now so everybody can break their fast. We'll be back at 9:30 with the Met Cosmetic Tafsir class. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika. Oh, assalamu alaikum, Dr. Ibrahim Darmali. Yeah, he's in Mecca. We see you. I know your internet is bad, but I see your check mark. We love you, Dr. Jamali. Make dua for everybody. Okay, guys. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Dr. Jamali.